The drama surrounding Caitlin Clark's injury struggles has finally come to light in ways no one saw coming. For months, fans speculated, analysts guessed, and the league tried to brush it aside, but Clark herself had remained mostly silent. Until now. In a rare, unfiltered interview with WNBA legend Sue Bird, Clark broke her silence and laid bare the emotional, physical, and mental toll that this stop-and-go season has had on her. What she revealed wasn't just about recovery or game preparation, it was about the pressure of being the WNBA's brightest star, the strain of shouldering an entire league's visibility, and the harsh reality of being tossed into professional, basketball's unforgiving grind without warning. Her honesty may just change the way the WNBA approaches player protection forever. Clark began the conversation by describing the frustration of living in a cycle she had never experienced before. Her words painted a picture of relentless effort met with cruel setbacks, as she talked about how hard she had worked in the off-season, only to spend the majority of her year in rehab instead of competition. For someone who had spent her college career thriving in consistency and building momentum with every game, the reality of constant interruptions and sudden shutdowns was foreign and agonizing. She admitted that on some days she could see the finish line clearly, feeling motivated and close to returning, only to be shoved back into doubt and discomfort the next day. There was no training camp to ramp her up gradually. Instead, she was thrown into game number 30 of the season with the expectation that she could somehow pick up exactly where she left off, as if injuries and lost rhythm weren't a factor. Clark made it clear, this wasn't just hard, it was a completely different kind of challenge, one she had never experienced before in her career. And the numbers tell the story of just how devastating these setbacks were. Her injury road began in preseason with a left quad strain, an ailment that sidelined her for 5 games between May 28th and June 10th. Just when she thought she had turned a corner, a left groin injury kept her out from June 26th to July 5th, costing her not just regular season action but also the Commissioner's Cup final. But it was the right groin injury, suffered on July 15th, that ultimately broke the rhythm of her entire season. It was the final straw in a year where she never truly felt comfortable, a year that tested her patience and her identity as a competitor. Clark admitted that the hardest part wasn't even the physical recovery. It was the uncertainty, the not knowing how her body would respond from one day to the next, the endless guessing game of whether she was just tight, just sore, or actually hurt in a way that demanded real time off. She spoke openly about the confusion she felt when the pain first set in. Was this just what being a professional athlete felt like? Was she getting old at just 22? Was it something as simple as needing a stretch, some icy hot, or a rub down? She had no frame of reference, and that lack of experience made the process mentally exhausting in ways the box scores could never show. Her perspective shifted when her mother sent her a simple but powerful message. After Clark's most recent setback, her mom texted her, reminding her that she had spent so much of her life giving to others, carrying the weight of expectations for teammates, coaches, fans, and even the league itself. Now, her mother insisted, it was time to take care of herself. That message, Clark admitted, hit differently. For the first time, she began to truly prioritize her own health over the expectations of everyone else. It was a rare moment of vulnerability from someone who has carried herself with confidence since her high school days, a reminder that behind the lights and highlight reels, Clark was still human, still learning what it meant to balance sacrifice with self-preservation. But while Clark was healing, the WNBA was learning just how much her presence meant. Attendance and viewership spiked when she played and dipped noticeably when she sat. On May 17th, when Clark and the Indiana Fever faced the Chicago Sky, nearly 2.5 million viewers tuned in, marking one of the highest-rated regular season games in league history. Yet in games without her, that number dropped by almost 1 million viewers. Her impact wasn't limited to television. In arenas across the country, ticket sales surged whenever Clark was expected to appear, and her team's record told the same story. With her on the floor, the Fever went 8-5. Without her, they fell back to an even 9-9. For a franchise clinging to playoff hopes, her presence meant the difference between momentum and mediocrity. The pressure to return under those circumstances was immense. Clark admitted to feeling the responsibility deeply, knowing that fans spent their money and time expecting to see her play, knowing that the league itself leaned heavily on her stardom to drive engagement. But she also acknowledged a growing sense of perspective. Even if she couldn't play, she wanted to be present. She traveled with the team, sat on the sidelines, signed autographs, and made herself available to the people who supported her. In fact, she admitted that she signed more autographs when injured than when she was active, trying to give fans something memorable even when she couldn't deliver on the court. It was her way of balancing responsibility with reality, a way of still giving even when her body wouldn't let her. Her candidness, however, didn't stop at vulnerability. When Sue Bird asked about her role on the bench during games, Clark smirked and said she was coaching the refs more than anyone else, and then she dropped a line that reverberated across the league. "I would make a good ref. I wouldn't miss a call." It was more than a joke. It was a direct challenge, wrapped in humor, aimed at one of the league's most sensitive issues, officiating. For years, players and coaches had quietly grumbled about inconsistency and questionable calls. Some had been fined for speaking out. But when Caitlin Clark, the league's biggest draw, made the criticism with a smile and confidence, the league couldn't dismiss it so easily. Her basketball IQ gave weight to her words. This wasn't whining about missed fouls. It was an observation from someone who studied film, who understood the angles, who could see patterns in the way games were called, and her timing made it impossible to ignore. That remark highlighted a darker reality about Clark's rookie season and beyond. From day one, opponents targeted her with a level of physicality that many believed crossed the line. Constant full court pressure, endless traps, deliberate attempts to force her into exhaustion. It went far beyond the typical welcome to the league treatment rookies receive. Clark admitted that it was overwhelming at times, that she was pressured every single possession, picked up 94 feet from the basket, forced to deal with levels of contact that didn't just test her skill, but punished her body. This wasn't about stopping her talent. It was about wearing her down. And the injuries she endured weren't coincidental. They were the direct byproduct of that relentless treatment. The league's problem was obvious. When LeBron James or Stephen Curry go down, the NBA doesn't collapse. The machine keeps running, because it has been built to sustain itself beyond individual stars. But the WNBA has tied so much of its growth and momentum to Clark that every injury felt like a crisis. And now, the player at the center of it all was openly questioning not just the officiating, but the culture that allowed her to take that much punishment in the first place. Clark admitted she had never experienced anything like this before. In college, she was protected. In the pros, she was a target. And the injuries that followed were proof that the system wasn't designed to protect the league's most valuable asset. Yet through it all, she found ways to ground herself. She talked about how motivating it was to meet fans before games, especially young kids who came out with signs and jerseys, kids who only wanted a moment with their hero. She admitted that seeing their faces gave her perspective, that their excitement reminded her why she pushed through the tough days.